And now, welcome to this session.
We have with us two speakers from Accenture Philippines, who will explore common real-world threats, targeting DevSecOps environments, and traditional defense strategies. They will provide insights into modern cybersecurity challenges and solutions. Our first speaker, Jaziel, has 11 years of experience in cybersecurity. He leads offensive security and OT security practice at Accenture Philippines. He's an incident response primary investigator, with experience in various cybersecurity fields, and has multiple CVE IDs to his name. With him is Mark, the application security lead, for Accenture Philippines, overseeing strategy, growth, and client relationships. With over 2 decades of experience, he's a certified Accenture technology architect, agile program manager, and seasoned DevSecOps practitioner. His expertise spans application development and security, agile methodologies, and Azure DevOps. Everyone, let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Jaziel Sam Carlos and Mr. Mark Arista.
Hi everyone, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's just set up our screen and
All right, for the sake of not mixing up our names, so my name is Mark Arista. I'm the application lead for Accenture Philippines for application security.
and I'm Jazz. I'm the OT security and offensive security lead for Accenture Philippines. I believe the slides are being shared now. Uh, so thank you for attending our session for today. We will be talking about the common real-world threats that are targeting the DevSecOps and what are the defense strategies there. Okay. The DevOps movement has been revolutionizing the software development with emphasis on collaboration, automation, and speed. However, the shift also introduced new threats to the landscape. Some of this will be the increased attack surface, where the rapid deployment of applications have been making it easier for other attackers to find new ways to enter a system. Complex environments, automation of automation vulnerabilities where um, new new things are being found, and also the worst one is supply chain attacks where um, this is being targeted by multiple attackers, which we'll be discussing later. Okay. So to show you our agenda for today, we will be discussing first the trends in the of CI/CD related security incidents. Afterwards, we'll be going to the common weaknesses in the CI/CD pipeline, then how we are revolutionizing DevSecOps to prevent cyber threats, then followed by the DevSecOps framework, and then how we can utilize the Gen AI technologies in our pipelines. Afterwards, you can ask your questions.
So for the first part, I'll be handing it first to Jazz, so I'll be out of your screen first.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay. So this is the trend of the CICD related security incidents. As technology advances, threat actors are also improving their tactics and techniques. More complex attacks have been launched uh, in our time, and consequently, the target has been always to find ways to affect more organizations and be discreet. Consequently, the CI/CD pipeline has been a significant target of these attacks because of these reasons. Just last year, my team and I discovered a 2-year-old supply chain attack affecting one of our clients. And it was because of a supply chain attack where a malicious code was injected into their application during the development cycle. And this is not an isolated case. What we will be presenting to you are the different um, incidents that happened in the past years related to CI/CD. So let's start with the most famous one, which is the SolarWinds breach. So what happened here is that the SolarWinds Origin system was compromised, and threat actors was able to inject malicious code in their in their application. Afterwards, the threat actors deployed ransomware, and it affected at least 18,000 organizations worldwide. This highlighted the devastating impact of supply chain attacks via CI/CD pipeline. As you can see, there were not much detection during that time, and it affected a lot of people. It was a busy year for security folks. And in April 2021, the CodeCub incident happened. So someone, a threat actor, uh, upload compromise their system and modify their bash uploader script. So what happened is that they modified the IP address where it's connecting, and they were able to um, collect customer credentials, and it affected around customers in the hundreds. Later that year, in Kaseya, so their VSA servers were compromised, and it pushed out um, malicious hotfixes containing ransomware. The ransomware is related to the Rebel ransomware group, and this attack fortunately only affected a limited number of Kaseya customers. In 2022, Travis CI token leak happened. So um, it was discovered that an API of Travis CI is leaking out logs, and on those logs are different user tokens, and it affected thousands of people and organizations. Fortunately, this is only affecting people who are using their free tool. Then later on 2022, in December, a threat actor gained access in the Circle CI system. It exposed um, customers' GitHub zero auth tokens and affected a lot of people at that time. They were able to respond to this quickly, and by January, they were able to resolve this and restore the uh, the zero auth tokens. In 2023, a vulnerability in TeamCity from JetBrains, and it was tagged as CVE 2023 42793. It was discovered, and it allows attackers to perform remote code execution. And the vulnerability has been actively exploited by threat actors. This was shared by the US Department of Homeland Security, and it was being exploited since September 2023. And for the most recent ones, in the March of earlier this year, you might have heard of the XC utils backdoor. So in March 2023, Red Hat advised the users to immediately stop using uh, systems running in Fedora development or experimental versions due to the backdoor found in XUtils. And as mentioned by Red Hat, the resulting malicious build interferes with authentication in SSHD via systemd. So SSH is a common use protocol in authenticating in Linux systems, and SSHD is the one that allows access. So in theory, this vulnerability could potentially allow malicious threat actors to bypass the authentication and gain access to devices remotely. Also, sorry, later this year, which is around mid um, 2024, reports from Wiz and JFrog shows that there are malicious AI models in Hugging Face. If you're not familiar with Hugging Face, it is one of the most known um, open source AI sharing platform, and you can download AI models there. And it was found that at least 100 AI models there are compromised or had malicious code into it. And it can even result into remote code execution or arbitrary command execution on affected systems. And this happened even though they are also implementing some scanning like uh, malware, secret scanning, pickle scanning, and even functional scrutiny. So just a quick look on the trends that happened in the past year. And with those information that we have gathered in the past few years, we tried to identify what type of weaknesses are the attackers really targeting. And we came up with the 6 common weaknesses in the CI/CD pipeline. First is the inadequate access control. So weak permissions, weak authentication practices, this can lead into real threat actors accessing your systems, your repositories, and any other um, asset that is unprotected. It can be through leaked credentials. It can also be through um, weak access control, allowing normal users or low privileged users to access uh, more privileged information or systems. There is also what we call dependency management vulnerabilities. As we are incorporating different functions into our applications, it also um, increases the attack surface, one of which is the dependencies that we use. And one way is to compromise those dependencies. I think in 2021, there were dependency confusion attacks that happened, which even compromise big companies. There are also insufficient logging and monitoring. So even if attackers are able to enter your system, insufficient logging and monitoring will aid the attackers to stay on the system. Also in unvalidated code and artifacts. So if you are not being careful with your code, it can introduce vulnerabilities, and it can also um, allow your systems to be used on um, supply chain attacks as well. Then, related to unvalidated code and artifacts is the lack of testing of security vulnerabilities. These types of vulnerabilities can be injected through um, modules or maybe dependencies or even on your own code. So there are different stages that uh, testings are being done, like your SAST, your DAST, or your pen testing. And then we also have weaknesses in the insecure configuration management. Um, there are times that there are no actual vulnerabilities in the code, but due to misconfigurations, it is still allows attackers to take advantage of this and gain access to your system. And with these vulnerabilities or weaknesses, uh, we tried to give you some uh, talking points on which strategies you can implement on your DevOps. First is the shift left security. So the main idea here is moving the security from the end going to the start of your development. So this can include um, the security testing, conduct security testing through deployment lifecycle, including static and dynamic analysis. It can also include threat modeling, where you try to find the different paths where an attacker can actually gain access to your um, application and provide attack trees so that you can map out the different paths there they can go in. The next is security, continuous security monitoring. So this includes your SIEM and SOAR solutions. This incorporates your continuous monitoring, real-time monitoring, like use of automated tools to continuously monitor what is happening on your system, uh, providing threat intelligence so you get to stay updated on the different emerging threats as well as the new vulnerabilities, and also having an incident response plan. So if ever an incident happens on your network, then an incident response plan would help you be more resilient and recover faster. Then there is what we call the secure infrastructure as code. So this helps us standardize how we secure our platforms. For example, instead of manually doing it, then we can have standard templates that we can use and make sure that everything is in terms of configuration already secure. It makes it easier and gives more confidence that we are properly securing and following the policies. Then one of the hardest ones is the secure supply chain management. This will include evaluating the security practices of your vendors as well as suppliers. It also encompasses the open source security. Are you able to scan or validate the open source modules or tools that you are using? And also dependency scanning. So make sure that the dependencies that you are using are the really trusted or the real dependencies that you need to be using. Then uh, we need to also create a secure, aware culture, like training and educating your people, providing security trainings or continuous testings, exercises that they can enjoy as well as learn, collaboration with the different development teams, security teams, operations, so that you can learn from each other. Then also rewards and recognition so that those who are doing good and following the best practices in terms of security are recognized. Then also, we need to look at the emerging technologies. For example, the AI. We can leverage that for automated threat detection, anomaly detection, and vulnerability assessments. So we can use that power so that we can empower our users and our resources so that they focus more on the relevant events rather than checking the false positives. You, we can also explore the blockchain and explore the potential of the secure data sharing and immutable records, which is part of it. And then also cloud security, how we can implement robust security measures in the cloud environment to protect our sensitive data. Um, However, these concepts are really hard to implement at the same time. And if we are protecting our DevOps, it might impede with uh, its use, which is to make development faster and more efficient. So to discuss more on that, I will be passing on the presentation to Mark to discuss this further.
Right. Um, Thank you, Jazz. So Jess has already discussed how we wanted to revolutionize and define some strategies in terms of governance and organizational changes in terms of improving the DevSecOps pipeline that we have. Now, I'll go on and share with you the current DevSecOps framework that we're currently using on our firm. I know that majority of us is really familiar on how this process work from plan to analyze, design, develop, test, and deploy until they operate. But where are we injecting the security practices in this DevSecOps framework? As I was showing you in this presentation, there are five major area where we can easily implement security. Not saying easily in terms of executing the work on integrating it to the pipeline, but we can easily identify where to play the security constraint. So at the early stage of plan and analyze, we can already do some security practices in terms of planning, especially for the security testing for your user stories, especially if you're doing some agile capability. You are already conducting or checking out what are the security practice needed for these stories or features or ethics that you're doing on your specific backlog. You can also proceed in terms of executing those stories to the design by securing it by design. As mentioned by Jas earlier, threat modeling has been a tool that would enable us in terms of what are the points or areas where we can encounter security threats or vulnerabilities. That's one. So basically on the design part, we can also check out that threat modeling is indeed important on that specific area. Security development has been common for everyone. So basically, the things that we're checking here in terms of the libraries that we're using, some of the third-party tool that we are checking out is also one of the vital area wherein we wanted to secure. So on this part, the static code analysis at the same time of the vendor, actually the vendor assessment would actually be also be playing role in terms of the plan and even the design part, but at the same time, you can also check it out on the third, which is on the development phase, because might probably will be uncovering some of the threats that that vendor has, or even vulnerable aspect of those third-party tools. The test phase, we already have the penetration testing and the dynamic application testing, as well as the code, as static code testing or the SAST, right? Which is pretty much common, and these are the basics or the what we call the foundational testing at least an application should have before moving to the next phase. And of course, come the deployment phase, Aside from doing the DAST or dynamic application testing, we are also entitled, or I mean, we are encouraged to do penetration testing, the next level of the DAST. I mean, the level two of, scrutinizing what your live application would be, right? In terms of determining what are the vulnerable area for that one. Um, and here on this framework, we are also focusing on three major um, uh, players: the people, the process, and technology. Basically, these three things always drive this DevSecOps framework. We have defined what we wanted in terms of securing the life cycle, but here in Accenture, we are driven to further make it better. With the use of the AI technologies, what we wanted to share with this group is how we really integrate Gen AI on best practices. One of the key things that we wanted to share with you is in terms of the risk assessment. Now, the risk assessment is usually done, usually on our experience, is done by a TA or a security practitioner. But right now, slowly but surely, I know that some of us are really, hesitant in terms of utilizing Gen AI for security work. But what our mindset has been is that Gen AI or AI would be your companion, not really the one doing your work, but your companion as you go along with the journey of the development life cycle. The risk assessment tool actually has this purpose of proactively identifying, assessing potential risk in the application at the earlier stage. What we have is that we created Gen AI that would actually scan through all the user stories that we have on our product backlogs. Um, and then from there, it would give you a result. What is the missing or required security component that this story should have and should consider and add it as part of the estimate or probably what they call this one, a requirement that they should be doing in terms of completing it or tagging it as done or part of the definition of done for that specific story. It has been, a script that's continuously running on that one. I know that some of you would be asking for the demo for that one, but it's kind of uh, crucial, and it would really eat up because it would be traversing to a lot of stories. But basically, that's one because the thing that we really wanted to do here is that even developers are aware that when they write a story, security should be also considered already on that specific area. Um, Code remediation. The code remediation is actually something that encompasses not just the remediation of identified code. We do know that we have this static application security testing, the SAS tool, and it provides you the report of what needs to be done and what needs to be remediated. At the same time, some of the principles of how you want to remediate it. Now, for this specific code remediating tool is that aside from it being integrated to your pipeline upon your build, it would actually help you in terms of doing exploitability analysis. What I mean is that this, I guess this is the new term for the false positive analysis. Before, we are doing the false positive analysis in terms of manual work, and we have identified that it's kind of tiring in terms of the continuous the identifying the same vulnerability for different application that we are scanning, and at the same time exerting same effort. So we have to automate it at the same time, use the expertise of this security folks that does false positive analysis and include it on an AI or Gen AI solution to help out the application team to easily identify if the vulnerability is indeed a true vulnerability or not. And that way, aside from providing them the possible remediation, we are also pointing out in terms of how you can enhance your code in terms of how do this line of code should be aligned. We are also the third one is the security prompt book. So the security prompt book is kind of driven by a security copilot. So for this one, um, it come up with an idea that how can we leverage the new joiners of adopting to the culture of developing a secured code. Before, what we have found out, though we have already implemented the SAS, the SCA, we continuously to have this number of vulnerabilities on the code. And we found out that the culture has never been passed, especially during the time of pandemic. We don't have this one-on-one body to body system in terms of coaching a developer or a new developer in terms of considering security. So with this security prompt book, we have identified several things to help them understand what is the security needed for that code. One of the key example that I'll be sharing to you is that authentication has been one of the great Waterloo of the DevOps in terms of being what they call this one, being exposed or being attacked. um, we did created a certain practice wherein all the models that we have in terms of coding and how the authentication and authorization should be imposed on that, let's say .NET, Java, or something, should be applied with this kind of authentication and authorization. So basically, those has been feed or those data has been put into the security prompt book so that whenever the developer check out if what is the it would be scanning your code. So after scanning the code that you built, it would automatically says to you that hey, you lack the authentication code for this specific. So that's one. Even the insecure headers that the developers usually forgot, especially the configuration for those headers. If your, let's say, information security team does provide you a certain set of standard, it's really a good thing that you use security copilot, or I mean a copilot in terms of helping out your developers to really understand and execute those kind of or add those security guardrails to their codes. So that's just two examples for this one. In addition to that one, since we wanted to push it for more, uh, especially I mean, for my part, my team has been using Azure DevOps for quite some times. And we really got used to kind of creating features. And those features that we could easily create into tasks. So some of the security things has been created as a feature, and we wanted it to be part of those DevOps pipeline. And indeed, after several tries and though we do have such pushback because at the end of the day, this would actually eat up probably 10 to 15 seconds in terms of building, right, or compiling their work. It seems like it's really more beneficial for the application team because aside from them being tagged as non-compliant, they could easily see that they can fix or really address it and at as early as in the the build of the code. So that's one of the key advantage. Um, I also wanted to share that we do have this several um, application security testing tools. Though it's not part of the Gen AI, I think one of the regulatory that we really wanted to push in terms of the DevSecOps is really how to gate them. Um, some of some of the projects or clients that I have encountered to during my journey in Accenture is that they really wanted to use the security testing tool in terms of just complying that they undergo the security testing. But at the end of the day, it doesn't add up additional value if you doesn't do certain governance or understanding what the compliance really is. So let's say, for example, if you really wanted to get critical and high vulnerabilities from this finding, it's really we really wanted to push that kind of mindset to everyone because you never know, right? Even the medium and low vulnerabilities are actually what do you call this one? They are getting promoted sometimes. I know that I'm not sure if you also encountered some of the DAS vulnerability that tags the vulnerability as medium. But at the end of the day, after analyzing those vulnerability for authentication and authorization, it's actually exposing the credentials. So I think those kind of guardrails and lessons learned that we have is actually good to share for this group as well. Nonetheless, after implementing this Gen AI technologies in our pipeline, we have uh, we have realized some of the benefits that we have aside from the things that we have put ourselves in applying the emerging technologies to our security products. We have improved the efficiency, of course, especially not just the workflow itself but also the developer. One of the key things that internally measured by our developers is that they are 50% more efficient in terms of coding secured products with the help of the copilots. In terms of security, aside from being called off, or I mean called out by our leadership team, the security vulnerability has been remediated prior to them being scanned on the production, or I mean on the testing area. And of course, cost saving is somewhat dependent, because at the end of the day, why we wanted to apply these emerging technologies to security is really more of a certain KPI uh, that is aligned to security and not really more of a cost saving, right? At some point, they would actually ask us, the business would ask us that you should cut off the cost for this one because it's really expensive, right? Especially security is really expensive. But if we really wanted to avoid breaches that would actually end up with the millions or even billions of cost loss for a certain company. That's actually what we wanted to earn. So it's really more of a cost saving on the future, or I mean, security perspective, not really more on the usual operational savings that we usually do. And of course, lastly, competitive advantage, because it's somewhat demonstrate and uh, the commitment that we have for security and data protection. So yeah, I think this would be the end of our slide, and so we're open to have questions. So I'm calling out Jess as well, so that we'll be sharing the screen. All right.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Sir Jazz. Thank you again. And Sir Jazz and
Mark.
Sir Mark. Sir Jazz and Sir Mark, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for your very insightful presentation. So guys, why don't we show our appreciation to our speakers this morning?
Mhm.
Shower them with a round of clapping and heart emojis. All right. So sir, as much as that they've enjoyed their your presentations, they actually have a lot of questions here in our Q&A tab. So let me just read them one by one. Okay. So our first question coming from Diane May Ramos. Implementing a secure DevSecOps can be seen as expensive from a stakeholder's point of view. What strategies can you suggest for effectively communicating its value and cascading this initiative throughout the organization?
Actually, as mentioned, it's really more of the KPI that is aligned to the security that we really need to present to them. I know it's kind of difficult because we have been on that under scrutiny in terms of providing feedback. Right now, actually, just to give you a heads up, I am actually working on a Gen AI that does threat modeling, but it is kind of difficult in terms of defining the value to them in terms of the cost. But upon hearing what the benefit it would does, let's say for example, if we can easily expose what are the vulnerable areas that we have, those are the key things that we have highlighted to our stakeholders. That's why it took out several days before it getting approved. But at the end of the day, if you really make them understand what security threats that you are addressing in terms of this kind of program, let's say, for example, the DevSecOps, right? The models that we wanted to introduce, um, they would be they would be appreciating it. In addition to that one, um, probably sharing some uh, at least the basic of, though DAST and SAST has been one of the application security testing tool that we have been integrating for the DevOps, or the one that in our pipeline, the frequency in terms of uh, using them would actually one of the guardrail that we could also one of the levers that we could use in terms of reducing the cost. But of course, that counts entails certain level of in terms of the security posture. We are also lowering it if we does it on a lesser frequency. Yeah. Just do you want to add anything? Yeah. Yeah. So I guess those are the key things, especially for pushing out this kind of work.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. And thank you, Diane, for that question as well. Our next question comes from John Ferrer. Looking
Mm.
ahead, what emerging threats do you see as the most concerning for DevSecOps practices, and how should organizations prepare for them?
Yeah. Regarding emerging threats, what we have seen in what we have observed in the past few months is leveraging AI, because a lot of organizations have been wanting to get on the race to implementing AI on their systems. And with that, attackers are exploiting that need, especially, for example, in what we've discussed earlier, Hugging Face uploading malicious Gen AI models. So those are the things that we can see. Also, um, leveraging the different weaknesses that are not yet uh, known to the public, like prompt injection, and also AI-related vulnerabilities, can be something that will affect depths of practice in the future. And how should organizations prepare for them? Uh, there are different things that you need to implement. So this will be a layered approach. First would be your governance, making sure that you have the right practices, making sure that you have the right policies and how it's being implemented and being done in the production itself. Also, making sure that everything is updated, your tools, um, your patterns, and also if you can create templates that you are sure that uh, can be reused and already secure, then that will be helpful in protecting against those types of attacks.
Yeah, I just wanted to add there as well. So how can the organization prevent? One of the key things that we have here, since Gen AI has been pushed, especially for the DevSecOps practices, is really more of the responsible AI model that we want, or the framework. I guess defining those kind of framework that would help your team in terms of securing those kind of tools would actually help you to to prevent this kind of threats that happens, especially that DevSecOps is actually just really more of a practice that we have, but the things that we're doing there, integrating Gen AI, is something that would actually open the door for emerging threats. So I think responsible AI framework is really essential nowadays for this one.
All right, thank you for that answer, Sir Jazz and Sir Mark. Our next question comes from Laarni Punla. Considering all the past threats, what protocols or practices should we consider standard for all platforms moving forward?
Hmm. As mentioned, probably I'll be speaking up on the how we have responded to those past threats. I mean, the past threat has taught us on what really matters most in terms of integrating it to the DevSecOps practice. As mentioned, authorization and authentication is one of the key things that we really look into uh, to make sure that every code or every entry point that a threat actor does is really secured. What we did is that we have consolidated a certain set of standards for all of the platforms that we are using or even software tools in terms of code practices. Then from there, we maximize it using the power of Gen AI, which is Copilot, just to make sure that every one of the developer is adhering to this practice or to the standard that we have pushed to them. So
Mm.
if we're saying what protocols or practices should be considered, I think it would be dependent on what's your priority. For our side, it's really more of the authentication and authorizations, especially the access management as those kind of configuration stuff. So if those are the things that matters to your organization, then focus there. Then from there, define those practices that is essential for your team or for your project. Then probably maximize the use of our emerging technologies to have it really embedded or probably done by your the folks that's under you or doing the code development.
If I would add to that, one practice that uh, is not being maximized right now would be threat modeling, because right now it's more of a compliance thing, but the real purpose of threat modeling is mapping out all the vulnerabilities before anything happens, before all the production, before all the coding can happen. Just on the based on the design, we can already see what are the potential vulnerabilities or attacks that can happen, and from there we can already prepare a secure design in the future and incorporate that as we go along the software development lifecycle.
Okay. Thank you for those answers. Thank you also to that question, Colleen. Our next question comes from Roy Tubo. What will be cyber threats in DevOps, and what areas in the DevOps could be affected by those cyber threats?
Yeah, there will be different things. Um, so at the start of the coding phase, then
Mhm.
if threat actors are able to gain access due to weak authentication practices or maybe leak codes, then it's possible to um, attack that. And during build phase, there are also attacks there that is happening. For example, dependency confusion attacks can happen where instead of pulling in the um a code that you are supposedly going to use, it connects to another repository and
Mhm.
gets integrated into the code you're building. So that can happen as well. So it depends on where it is and what can apply.
Exactly. Actually, one of the key things that's also prone to DevOps is really more of the supply chain,
Yeah.
because majority of the things that we're doing on DevOps, we wanted to make it what's available in the market, what's really readily available that will help you make the process of the development build automated at the same time efficient. We're looking out for those kind of vendors or third-party tools, so it's really crucial for us to really see how would this supply, or I mean vendors, are doing the security practice. So it is kind of difficult in terms of assessing, but at least I mean for me, from my standpoint, it would be really defining what's the responsibility of this third party tools or vendors in terms of the ensuring that the security that's happening, because as you know, majority of the threats that has been uncovered is coming from a third party trying to push a bash or even penetrating the authentication of the third party tools. So yeah,
Mm.
that's one thing that I have on top of my mind right now.
All right. Thank you, sirs. Roy, I hope those satisfy your question. Our next question, we have another question from Laarni Punla. She's asking, are current VAPT scans provide enough level of security?
Mhm.
So that's a good question. So different services have different pros and cons. So a BAPT would incorporate a vulnerability assessment and a penetration testing. So VA is mostly just scanning and making sure that the scans are as as accurate as possible, while the PT side or the penetration test is a combination of the scanning as well as the manual efforts of the analyst, so that they can actually find and verify vulnerabilities. This can also include the vulnerabilities that um, are not seen by the automations. We have experienced a lot of that it already passed um, other scannings, but during the penetration testing, we were able to find zero-day vulnerabilities because of the complexity of that vulnerability, or maybe it's a novel type of attack. So to answer that, it depends on what you are currently looking for. So BAPT is something that would be useful, but it's not enough.
Yes.
We need a different layers
Layers, yes,
of
security.
defenses.
So she actually has a a quick follow up to that particular question, but
Okay.
we can flash it on the screen because she just commented it under the question. So she's adding, what criteria should we be looking for when employing vendor that will provide the APT scans?
Okay, that's a good question. Um, I think one of the uh, things that you would need to look for is the capability of the team. One indication would be certifications that they have attained. Uh, Also, if they can provide some success stories that uh, that are relevant to you. Of course, there are different vendors, but we cannot comment on everyone. We cannot provide that. But what we can say is that look at the portfolio of those vendors. What are their specialties? Maybe some people or some organizations would do better at different um, technologies.
Okay, Lauren, I hope that answers both your questions, no? Another question here we have is from Chris. How do you ensure that compliance requirements are met in a DevSecOps?
Compliance requirement. Actually, one of the key things that we are doing in terms of having everyone, let's say, a project is really adhering to the security compliance is really more of tracking them. It is really great to have this kind of dashboard to track everything else. So it doesn't just really have to do with the result of your security application testing, but at least the end-to-end part of the security is being reported there. So the dashboard would actually says to you, or actually, let me put it this way: we have put on the security tools in every on every area of the DevSecOps. But at the end of the day, this has been implemented, but no one is monitoring it, or no one is, checking out the health of this project in compliance with these security requirements that we have. It's really good that the governance team or the leadership team has this dashboard to really or easily monitor which is adhering and which is not. And of course, aside from those dashboard, as mentioned, gating an application from doing its build or probably deployment to production if they are called out of that dashboard that they are becoming non-compliant is actually really good. So those are some of just the things that I have right now in terms of how we wanted to ensure that the application teams or that is in DevSecOps is really adhering to the compliance requirement that we have.
Thank you. I think our participants appreciated that answer, no, because we've seen heart emojis after that answer. Our next question, what role does automation play in enhancing security within the DevSecOps pipeline, and what tools do you find most effective?
Actually, automation is actually really part of the DevSecOps, right?
Mhm.
But in terms of recommending what tools is the most effective, so let's focus first on the first question. What role does automation play in enhancing security? Um, for us, security has been one of the big area that would actually make or break a project. If you're unsecured, actually you're already a failure on that one. But if you are secured, so you have to be stringent and rigid in terms of implementing those security guardrails. Automation or automating this kind of guardrails helps you improve your development and deployment to production or shipping your MVP forward on a faster level, unlike not doing it manually. So the usual benefit of automation for us, even cost saving, because the lesser time you complete those tasks, the more time you have to do other things. Now, if recommending the tools that you have to be most effective, I think it would really matter on what what do you call this one, what your project needs. So if let's say for me, I have a DevSecOps pipeline and I do want the BA to be or the testing tool to be automated, right? And I needed the results as early as possible. For me, I'll be creating an orchestrator, right? A platform that would actually entail those security testing, then uh, put everything there so that after all the result has been harvested or after all the pipeline has been executed, there's a readily report that I could browse into and fix every remediation or work on those action items. So in terms of the tools, I can't really provide anything, but for me, the what fits to your need would actually be the best answer for that one. Hopefully, I answered your question.
Yeah, that's actually an anonymous
Okay.
participant, but yeah, hopefully that answered. I think that answered the question because they also put a thumbs up. Okay, our next question is what are some common misconceptions about DevSecOps that you encounter, and how can organizations address them?
So, sorry for that one. Actually, one of the common misconceptions that we have with DevSecOps is actually it actually a solution for everyone's problem, which is not.
Mhm.
Actually, DevSecOps is a practice that would help you solve the problem, not really solving the problem. So if you're actually not using it the right way, you'll actually be misled. One of the things that usually happens if you're doing the DevSecOps is that, hey, yeah, we're doing DevSecOps, but do we really understand what it does? Um, One of the challenge that I encounter is that after putting in several automated testing tools, the stakeholders would come back to us that we are actually imposing more cost to them because we are providing them a lot of action items, right?
Mhm.
So DevSecOps is not actually also uh, cutting out your operational cost. It might actually ask you for mm, additional money, right? So you won't be realizing the savings that you have for this DevSecOps, especially if you're automating some of the security tools in the DevOps practice. Unlike the usual automation, right? If you're automating a manual work, relatively easily understand the value of the saving. But for DevSecOps, automating security work doesn't actually equate on that one. The
Mhm.
more effective your security automation, probably the more work that you'll be doing in terms of improving your security posture. So that's one. And the common how can the organization address them? Actually, it's really more of a mindset. The security culture that we wanted to impose for everyone, if they really understand that we have found out this kind of vulnerability and it's putting at risk. The application is at risk. The company is at risk. So if those kind of risk has been communicated to them well and they understand it, that's actually how we wanted to address this one.
Mhm. Thank you, Sir Jazz. Okay, another question. I think we still have time for at least two more questions. Actually, ang dami talagang questions, sir, pero pinipili ko na lang kung ano yung pinaka-voted na amongst them. So, one question from John Ferrer, how can we integrate penetration testing into our CI/CD pipeline?
Actually, it's kind of difficult. I mean, just you could also agree. I'll take a step first, then you can follow. Um, we're actually automating. We do have this initiative to actually do penetration testing as an automated way and using some Gen AI practices. But we are really failing in terms of putting it on the CI/CD pipeline because there's really a right timing to do penetration testing, and it's not really something that you should do regularly, at least on the practice that we have for DevOps. It won't be going. We are not recommending it that every after build you'll be doing penetration testing. At the same time, I think not every use case is subject for automation. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I would really agree with that. We cannot fully integrate penetration testing to
Mhm.
our CI/CD pipeline right now. Maybe in the future there will be technologies that would allow that, but right now, not. I don't think there is. What we can do is actually incorporate some of the practices in penetration testing, such as uh, creating your own detection
Yes.
rules, but the full penetration testing practice right now isn't really uh, going to mix well with the DevSecOps.
With the practice, the DevSecOps practice, I think the model. I think right now.
Okay, our second to the last question. Okay, let's just have two more. Promise. So, what can you suggest to start learning and adopt in DevSecOps best practices in an organization? From Nestor.
Aha. So for this one, if before we go on to the DevSecOps, actually, at least everyone on the organization is actually familiar what DevOps is, right?
Mhm.
Because actually DevSecOps is just really more of integrating, right? Or introducing security to your DevOps practice. So if the baseline in terms of understanding the DevOps practice is shaky, or we really have to build it, I guess focus it on that first. What's really the goal of DevOps? What's the purpose why we are doing DevOps? Then afterwards, we can go on and proceed with the DevSecOps, wherein we wanted to introduce how we can easily secure the entire DevOps practice on our organization. So if we're gonna, so just to start and adopt in the learning process, it's really more of understanding DevOps first, how the automation works on this one, and how we are introducing security and how we are automating it, how we should be practicing the frequency of in terms of scanning, how we wanted to address vulnerabilities that has been detected on the build phase. So those kind of things. So again, at the end of the day, it would be a great understanding of what DevOps is, then probably introduce the security piece afterwards. I think you're on mute, Ein.
Sorry about that. Anything to answer, Mark? Okay. Wala na?
Wala na.
Okay. All right. So our final question, I think this is a relevant question that we should just to wrap up everything. Now, how can we transition the organization to a more DevSecOps focused approach without disrupting the existing development processes or introducing significant risks?
Hmm. Actually, transformation. All right. For this question, I wanted to share how we did it for the organization that I am working on right now. We started out in terms of identifying the low-lying fruits. Because if you have this low-lying fruits identified, let's say for example, the easiest way to introduce automation of security on the DevOps pipeline is really more of the code because it's really more of the easiest or the tangible things that we can really easily fix, remediated, scan. So that's how I would be starting off. The developers can easily understand how the code security happens, what are the practices that we have for this organization. So from there, we are already stabilizing that we have at least a certain culture of security in terms of the development. Afterwards, we can introduce software composition analysis where we wanted to dissect the libraries that we're referencing to. And again, it's really more of a code changes that would entail because you will be actually upgrading some of the libraries or even replacing it if there is really no secured library available or update for that one. Then move forward with the DAS, then probably penetration testing, threat modeling. So it is a gradual step, but I can't really focus on how seamless the pain would be or the disruption that it might cause the system. But actually introducing security to your DevOps is actually would really disrupt the organization. So it actually changes every or the landscape that you'll have. But I'll be checking out for you. It's really more of check out the low lying or the easy wins for you guys in terms of security practices.
Okay, that's all. That's all, sir. Okay. Thank you so much for wrapping this up very well, the Q&A portion. I hope our participants appreciate all the answers. And I would like to apologize again to all the other questions that were not answered. I do hope that they can still reach you here through the platform, sir, AirMeet, to have a quick chat even after this session. Okay. Once again, let's thank our speakers this morning, Sir Jazz and Sir Mark. Let's shower them with a round of applause and heart emojis. Thank you again, sirs. So that's all the time that we have for this session. So if you enjoyed this particular session, you kindly give your rating and share your feedback about our speakers and this particular session. Okay, you'll find the link in the chat box for the feedback form. Okay, so again, let's thank our speakers this morning. And please exit this particular session and move to your next session. Bye, everyone. Thank you.